Joe's a private investigator. He works with his partner Don Ridley, who's kind of become like a father figure to Joe. And Joe lost his wife in a house fire a couple of years ago, and because the police weren't able to get to the bottom of it, he started to look into it himself, found he had a gift for being an investigator, and joined forces with Don, and who's a kind of an older guy, so he was looking to retire, and Don's daughter Sarah, who works in the office. And yeah, they kind of work small cases around the city, and in Broken Dreams they're asked to look into an employee of a building in the city who's off ill, and that kind of opens up a whole world of pain for Joe when he starts to investigate and find her dead in a bed in a house. And this employee is married to a prominent businessman in the city, which kind of causes Joe an awful lot of difficulties, but also gives him the possibility of looking into his wife's death a bit further and possibly getting some answers for himself. Joe's is kind of in his late 30s, early 40s, and he's a former rugby league player in his youth, in which again was a deliberate thing to draw a little bit out about the city, because we have two rugby league teams in the city. It's something that's important within the city, and it's a way of drawing out a little bit more of the character of the place. Joe received a career-ending injury in his late teens just after he broke into the Hull Kingston Rovers first team, so he's also a man who's kind of drifted through life a little bit and kind of had dreams shattered and not really kind of got to grips with things particularly. I think kind of all the main characters in the story kind of have some element of a broken life, where maybe dreams they've had have been broken and shattered a little bit. And Joe's certainly no exception. I think the other important thing to mention about Joe is that I wanted him to be a fairly normal guy. A lot of private investigators and police investigators in books tend to be kind of almost superhuman, and I didn't want Joe to be that. I just wanted to be a normal guy who kind of works to pay the rent and feed himself, and although he found himself in difficult situations, I don't think they're too far-fetched. At the end of the day, he's a private investigator, and a lot of the work guys like that do tends to be under the radar, I guess. It kind of rubs up against the police a little bit in the book, but by necessity, a lot of the work he's doing is pretty dirty work. And if you do that, you're probably going to end up rubbing up against some rather unpleasant people, as Joe probably does a little bit. Kind of came up with a vague sketch to start with that I wanted him to be, as I say, a fairly normal guy trying to do a difficult job. But in terms of other influences on him particularly, not so much. Obviously the work of someone like Raymond Chandler, who sort of defines the PI role, was hugely important. And I suppose you can kind of draw a line between the two characters, although I'm aware I'm writing in the year 2009, so I wanted it to be kind of up to date and relevant, but still hopefully believable as well. So he's not just a learner who drinks and sort of picks up women at will and then discards them the next day. He's a normal, regular guy to a large extent, I think. I just tend to call myself a crime writer. I guess if you're looking for kind of genres, it's probably more like a sort of noir story. It's a very dark story. There's elements of Chandler in there, but equally I think there's more kind of elements of people like Rankin, hopefully people like Michael Connolly, you can sort of tell entertaining tale, but with a bit of intelligence and a bit of with kind of interesting subject matter, rather than just, as we say, sort of superhuman men just beating people up every 5 minutes, every second page. So yeah, I think I just see myself as a crime writer really, but I think it's kind of it's certainly a dark book, I guess, in general. Joe's got a lot at stake in the book, because as we say, his wife died a couple of years ago, and there may be kind of answers for him at the end of this case in relation to that. So Joe's got sort of personal motivation as well as wanting to solve the case that he's paid to resolve. And Hull gets a bad press, generally speaking. It's regularly near the top of the list of the worst cities to live in the country. We're an isolated port out on the coast, and it's kind of easy just to write the city off, but so it's a way of kind of addressing that through my own way, a little bit of positive interest in the city. I'm not pulling any punches in the book. I'm not painting it to be kind of some great city where everybody's fantastic and it's a lovely place to live. There are kind of grim places and grim moments in there, but I think it's about trying to just achieve a bit of balance, really.